Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Before we get started, please make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and follow the account so you never miss an update on our certification series. Today, we are bringing the machine to life. We are diving into CompTIA A+ Core 1, Objective 3.5, where we will completely deconstruct the anatomy of a modern PC, mastering motherboards, CPUs, and add-on cards. Think of the motherboard as the central nervous system of the computer. It facilitates every single piece of communication between your processing, storage, and peripheral components via complex bus systems. All of these system operations are synchronized by the system clock, which is measured in megahertz or gigahertz. Ultimately, the motherboard you choose dictates the physical limitations, hardware compatibility, and future upgrade paths for the entire machine. First, we have to pick our skeleton, the form factor. ATX is your standard desktop board measuring 12 by 9.6 inches and supporting up to 7 expansion slots. If you need something smaller, microATX is a 9.6-inch square that maxes out at 4 expansion slots, but can easily mount inside a standard ATX case. For small form factor builds or home media centers, we use Mini-ITX, which is just 6.7 inches square and provides exactly one single expansion slot. Next is the brain, CPU architecture. Most desktops and servers use x86 or x64 architecture, which is a complex instruction set computing (CISC) design dominated by Intel and AMD. The x64 extension specifically allows for massive amounts of RAM. In the mobile and fanless device space, we use ARM architecture, which relies on reduced instruction set computing (RISC) for highly power-efficient system-on-chip designs. To boost processing power, CPUs use multi-threading, like Intel's hyper-threading or AMD's SMT, to allow one physical core to act as two virtual execution threads. For massive enterprise servers, we use symmetric multiprocessing (SMP) to put multiple physical CPUs on a single board. To attach that brain, we use CPU sockets. Intel primarily uses the land grid array (LGA), meaning the fragile pins are located in the motherboard socket itself, and the CPU just has flat contact pads. AMD historically used the pin grid array (PGA), where the pins were right on the processor, though modern generations have transitioned to LGA designs as well. Both styles use a zero insertion force (ZIF) mechanism, and you must perfectly align the pin 1 indicator triangle to avoid catastrophic pin damage. Our neural pathways are the expansion buses. PCIe, or Peripheral Component Interconnect Express, is the modern standard, utilizing high-speed serial point-to-point links. Slots range from X1 all the way up to X16 lanes. Thanks to a feature called upplugging, you can safely put a shorter card into a longer slot. We also have the legacy PCI bus, an older 32-bit parallel standard that uses physical voltage keying to prevent incorrect card insertion, which you still need to know for legacy support. For our memory banks, we have storage connectors. The standard SATA connector handles 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch drives via a 7-pin data cable capped at 600 megabytes per second. We use eSATA for external hard drive enclosures. But the bleeding edge is M2 NVMe, a horizontal slot that natively bridges the PCIe bus for extreme speeds. These cards draw power right from the board, eliminating messy cables. To provide lifeblood to the system, we need power. The primary 24-pin ATX connector delivers 3.3, 5, and 12-volt DC power directly from the PSU, while a separate 4 or 8-pin connector gives dedicated power directly to the CPU. The motherboard also relies on front panel headers to connect your chassis power button, activity LEDs, and internal USB ports, alongside audio headers that link up the chassis microphone and headphone jacks. We can enhance the machine's capabilities using expansion cards. Video cards, or GPUs, handle heavy 3D rendering and typically require the fastest PCIe X16 slot. Sound cards provide high-fidelity audio and dedicated recording inputs. Capture cards ingest external video feeds for streaming and recording. And network interface cards, NICs, add specialized adapters for high-speed fiber optics or wireless 802.11 standards. All of this power generates massive heat, bringing us to the respiratory system, air cooling. Without cooling, parts will throttle performance or suffer permanent damage. We use heat sinks, metal blocks with fins, to dissipate heat via convection. To make that transfer efficient, we apply thermal paste to completely eliminate microscopic heat-trapping air gaps between the CPU and the heatsink. Finally, 3-pin or 4-pin PWM fans actively exhaust the hot air out of the chassis. For advanced respiration, we step up to liquid cooling. This is essential for high-end gaming rigs, multi-core workstations, and high ambient temperatures. Closed-loop or all-in-one AIO coolers are pre-assembled systems that require zero maintenance. Open-loop coolers offer maximum thermal dissipation but require strict maintenance, like draining and refilling to prevent blockages or leaks. When you press the power button, you awaken the subconscious, the BIOS and UEFI. The legacy BIOS is text-based and limited to booting from drives 2.2 terabytes or smaller due to the MBR partition limit. Modern systems use UEFI, which features a graphical interface with mouse support, faster initialization, and 64-bit operation, allowing for massive GPT storage drives. You access this by pressing keys like Delete, F2, F10, or F12 during the power-on self-test. Once inside the firmware, you can set your directives. You can change the boot priority to dictate the search order for the OS, prioritizing an NVMe drive, a USB flash drive, or a network boot. You have hardware control, allowing administrators to completely disable hardware like USB ports to prevent data theft. You can also monitor temperatures and define fan curves, ensuring the fans speed up to balanced or cool speeds when the CPU gets hot. The firmware also acts as the immune system. Setting a supervisor or BIOS password restricts unauthorized users from entering the UEFI to change configurations. A user or system password is a hard lock that prevents the OS from booting entirely until provided. Most importantly, Secure Boot checks the OS bootloader against cryptographic keys, stopping malicious rootkits from ever loading. For absolute security, we use the Vault. The TPM, or Trusted Platform Module, is a tamper-resistant microchip permanently attached to the motherboard that establishes a root of trust to securely store keys for things like Windows BitLocker. If your system lacks a TPM or you need extreme portability, you can use an HSM or Hardware Security Module, which is a secure USB thumb drive requiring a PIN or biometric authentication to unlock. Finally, we have virtualization support for multitasking. To run virtual machines, you must explicitly enable hardware-assisted virtualization in the BIOS, branded as Intel VTX or AMD-V. To handle the intense memory needs of VMs, second-level address translation, SLAT, known as Intel EPT or AMD RVI, dramatically improves virtual memory mapping efficiency. And that brings us to the fully assembled system. The modern PC relies on absolute synergy. The form factor dictates your scale, the socket dictates your brain, the expansion buses define your capabilities, the cooling maintains stability, and the firmware secures the foundation. Understanding how to configure these interrelated components is the core competency of an A+ certified professional. To make sure you've mastered these concepts, end your study session today by getting some hands-on practice with PBQ-like questions at XP Boost. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.